Hello gamers, it's me, KOK. This is my M12 Phase 1 and Phase 2 White Mage Clear POV. Phase 1 will be the current PF strats, which is Toxic Friends raid plan, and Phase 2 will be BananaCodex strats. There are a couple of different Phase 2 Party Finder strats currently, so it is not guaranteed to be the strat that ends up sticking for PF, so just be aware that the positions may be different. So, Phase 1, this is my recommended White Mage mitigation, but I planned this out after my clear, so what you see in the video may not match exactly to this plan, but this is what I feel is the general best and safest for the Phase 1 damage. Phase 1 honestly doesn't have a hard healing check, but it does have some pretty difficult mitigation checks. So it is important to plan your mitigation properly while knowing that the actual healing part isn't that stressful for this phase. Honestly, Phase 2 doesn't have many heal checks either. It is again mostly just a mitigation check. This is the first high-end content with the new and improved White Mage buffs. It honestly made a huge difference to White Mage's viability. Whenever you're doing your stack and spread for this mechanic and you have to face away from the boss to point your cleave, I recommend doing a Medica 3 while you are not facing the boss. If you want, you can do a Lily for uptime while not facing the boss, but that's a little greedy. I recommend using Temperance for the stack and spread damage, and then saving your Divine Caress, which is your shield, for the follow-up Fixer AoE. This fight actually has a lot of really cool Divine Caress timings, where you use Temperance early and then use your Divine Caress later to catch something else. In other words, throughout this phase and the next phase, there are a lot of mechanics where it does a smaller hit first and then a bigger hit right at the end, which saving Divine Caress for that bigger hit at the end is really useful. Something to keep in mind, I'm personally not very used to holding Divine Caress since it wasn't really that important before, but here it actually is pretty good. So Party Finder does the BananaCodex coil strat, which is the best coil strat. I have a 3 alpha POV here, and it's easy. You just soak the first stage tower and then you just walk out when your timer hits 0. Alphas do need to pay attention to the stage spawn orders. The betas do not actually have to pay attention to the stage blobs. Coils is pretty easy. I highly recommend that you check out my mini guide on how to do both banana coils and double baiting orbs, which makes the mechanic pretty free. I don't see many people doing double bait orbs, but that's something that people are sleeping on in my opinion. For the Splattershed, you should use your plenary for this, and going into Act 3. If you want, you can save 3 lilies for this downtime phase to maintain your GCD rolling, but that's not something I would recommend in Prague. So, for the poison baits here, I recommend using your Temperance, and then you can save your Divine Caress for the Fixer here, since the Fixer does a lot more damage. Curtain Call is another very hard mitigation check, especially if your party isn't using their mids properly. I use plenary here, and just make sure to heal people as needed. You want to heal people up when you go center for the chains, make sure they're all full HP. You can use Asylum, you can use the sides, you can use lilies. It doesn't matter, just make sure they're full HP. Another repeat orbs mechanic. Not really a hard heal check. PF does not do double baits on orbs, which is a real shame. Double baits makes this mechanic so free. I don't really care what priority that party finder ends up using, but double baits is a no-brainer. Wiping to it this late would be just tragic. Now onto the enrage sequence. I recommend using a plenary for the first splatter, temperance for the second splatter, and plenary should be back up again for the third splatter. Just make sure you don't use plenary too late on the very first splatter. You can use bell on any of the 3 sets, it doesn't really matter, so you can choose to maybe bell one and asylum another. Just use it wherever it's convenient for you. And yeah. Toxic Friends raid plan has healer 1 always being on the very far corner, kind of the easy position. Just make sure that you don't walk off the edge. If you're someone that puts arm spawn left to right macros in the party chat for this mechanic, you're a beast. Doing that decreases the chance you wipe at the end by like 60%. If you feel confident that you can pay attention, I'd highly recommend that you at least set up your macros to prevent possible wipes. And finally, for the third splatter, you should have your plenary up if you didn't use it too late on the first one. Go to your stacker spread, and the phase is over. So I did use the mitigation fairly accurately to how I laid it out in the beginning. And of course, always make sure your party doesn't die to not being topped. If the party ever dies to not being topped, that's your fault. Use Medicas, use Lilies, use Cured 3s or whatever. Just make sure you do your job as a healer. Your damage is not that important. Of course, as you get more tome gear or re-clear gear, the healing difficulty becomes less difficult because you have more HP and your heals do more potency. But especially in the beginning, especially if you're progging, just make sure you overheal rather than underheal. So this is my phase 2 White Mage POV using BananaCodex strats. This is not guaranteed to be the final PF strats, so keep that in mind. You can use a pre-pulled Temperance here for the very first Arcadia raid wide. It's not a huge deal if you don't, but it's free, so I guess you might as well. But definitely use a plenary here for this raid wide. The Arcadias in this phase hurt a lot. So this is the BananaCodex replication strat. I see a lot of PFs doing the DN replication strat. They are both fine in my opinion. In fact, I think I prefer the DN one a bit better because it doesn't require you to memorize the Protean cleaves. But throughout this entire thing, the main tank will be taking autos. Just make sure they don't die to autos at the same time as their bait, because they do take a lot of chip damage throughout the entire setup phase. If you have Aqua Veils or Benisons, throw them on the tanks, either for their buster or for the autos. Yeah, nothing happens for a while now. How are you guys liking the tier? How are you guys liking the White Mage changes? White Mage is honestly so good right now in my opinion. Having a dash, having good heals, and having mitt. White Mages are eating pretty good now. And Replication 2. Remember, this is BananaCodex strats. I am relative south in this POV, which means I grab no tether. Making west the new north changes the order of the mechanics, which we decided was convenient. At the Firefall Splash cast bar, you can use your Temperance here, along with Divine Caress. For these stacks, I recommend using Lilybell and Planary. Yeah, this strat's a lot different than the DN clone, so just make sure you're doing the right strat and not the one necessarily that you're seeing here. Unless you're doing the BananaCodex clone, in which case you can use my positioning. Anyways, for blood mana, we did a 4-4 soak. I think Party Finder's leaning towards 1-3 soaks. Does not really matter either way. The mechanic is roughly the same for either way that you want to handle it. I will say that 4-4 soaks makes the healing and mitigation less difficult. So that's something to consider. For this Arcadia, you should use your Planary. And on this double tank buster cast bar, I'd recommend using Temperance here. The mitigation on Temperance might fall off. You can save your Divine Caress all the way to this Idyllic Dream, since the Idyllic Dreams also hurt a lot. Remember, this does require you to use your Firefall Splash Temperance pretty early at 205. Anyways, no damage happens for like a minute here. So at this point, you're pretty much just glaring and paying attention to the mechanic setup. So while nothing's happening here, I'm gonna yap a bit. I think this tier was really cool. I really like the thematic portions of it, and the music in particular was a real standout. The announcer was also a really nice addition to the atmosphere of the raids, and it really felt like there was a lot more care put into the theming of the raids compared to last expansion. Overall, I really enjoyed it. Not sure if I'm looking forward to PFing this tier though. The next instance of damage is the split platform meteors. I think using a Planary for it is not a bad idea. However, you can instead save Planary for the stack and defamation spam, which is a much harder healing check. Right here, with the stack and defamation spam, this is pretty much the hardest healing check across the entire fight. And as a white mage, all you need to know is you pretty much just use everything. You use Temperance, you use Bell, you can use Asylum, you can save your Planary from earlier for here as well to make it easier. But even then, it's still not that hard. It's just that some players will be taking 3 instances of damage. This is the BananaCodex bait strat. It could be different from the Party Finder strat. And finally, we have a couple of stacks at the end. You can use a Planary on this very first stack here, which is a heavy slam. Again, do as I say, not as I do. I did not have a properly planned out P2 mid sheet at this point of my POV, since I've spent less than 1 lockout in phase 2 total. You'll have to excuse me. But if you follow the timeline mitt that I posted at the start of the video, then I think that would set you up pretty well. So, final sequence starts with a tank buster. Give your tank single target mitt if you want. Alternatively, you could save your single target mitt for the final Arcadian 2. This is the first Arcadian cast bar. For the first Arcadian, you can use your Temperance at the very end, and it will be able to catch both of them since they're about 20 seconds apart. And you can use your Divine Caress specifically for the second one, which does more damage. Also, your Plenary should be up for the second one as well. Yeah, that's my M12s White Mage POV. Sorry that the phase 2 mitigation that I did in the video, it doesn't quite match what I think the recommended mitigation should be, but at least it should give you an idea of where to heal the mechanics, since that's roughly the same across all PF strats. Yeah, thanks for watching, hopefully you found it a bit helpful, and I wish you good luck on your prog. GG's, and I'll see you around.